Welcome everyone. It is 11:20 Eastern Standard Time, so let's go ahead and get started. My name is Matthew Burgess. I'm from the University of Virginia, and I will be moderating this session, which is an active learning session entitled Student Pages in the Lessons Tool. Before we begin, for those of you who have not yet been in a webinar with us today, I just want to go over a few housekeeping details. First of all, this session is being recorded, and you'll receive an email announcement once the recordings are available to be viewed. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to type them into the questions box, which is located on the GoToWebinar control panel. The presenter for this session is Lucy Tallents. Lucy is a postdoc with the Wildlife Conservation Research Unit at Oxford University. She creates distance learning courses in conservation research skills to enhance the capacity of wildlife conservation professionals in biodiverse countries. She's also a fellow of the UK's Higher Education Academy and a joint winner of the Higher Ed Online Hybrid category of the Teaching with Sakai Innovation Awards in 2015. If you haven't talked with her about this already, she's an enthusiastic advocate of the Lessons tool in Sakai, and she's very eager to promote experiential and peer learning through its use. So we're very fortunate to have Lucy with us today, and she's going to give us a great presentation on student pages in the Lessons tool. So take it away, Lucy.
Thank you very much, Matt. It's really good to be here. This is my first virtual conference, either attending or presenting. So I'm hoping this session goes smoothly and that you enjoy it and that you also get a lot out of the whole conference. So I'd like to welcome you to this active learning session, and I hope that you're really ready to tackle the tasks that we've got down today and learn together from each other. And I just wanted to check before we go into the details whether you're all okay if we take up 40 minutes on this session. So if we run it up until 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, that would just give us a little bit more time to play with the pages and then for me to summarize what I can see that we've learned and for you guys to come in with questions and comments as well. So if you could raise your hands, and I believe either myself or Matt will be able to see how many people have raised their hands to say that you're okay with continuing until 12 noon. Okay, so I'm not seeing anything on my screen. Matt, have you got anything?
I can see some hands going up already, Lucy. So far, about 40% of the participants, so about 18 people,
okay, great,
have said that they can do that.
Wonderful. Okay. I mean, the great thing about this session is that all of the stuff that we learn, you guys are going to contribute to the shared doc, and it will be accessible for the rest of the day and for as long as this site itself is accessible. And I'm not quite sure how long that will be. So if any of you do have to nip out at 10 to 12 and you can't make it to those final 10 minutes, that's absolutely fine. You can still come and find out what we decide we've learned over the course of the next half hour. Okay, so during the session, I'm happy to take questions at any point, either verbally or by chat. I'm going to be active on the Sakai site with you, so I won't necessarily be keeping an eye on the chat window, but we're very lucky to have Matt, who's promised that he will keep an eye and alert me to any questions that are coming up in chat if I don't happen to notice them. Okay, so we're going to move on. Just to remind you what I would like the learning outcomes to be from this. So after this session, you should be able to identify ways in which you could use student pages in your own Sakai sites and describe, from having been the student, been in that situation yourself, how your own students might experience tasks of creating their own student page, leaving comments, peer reviewing other pages, and collaborating on a group page. In this case, we're going to use a Google Doc. You'll also be able to assess any potential challenges in using student pages, suggest how to guide the students to use the tool effectively, and recommend improvements in the design of this tool, which I hope will feed through into the development of lessons pages and the student pages in particular. So, I'm almost at the end of my bit, and then I'm going to hand the baton over to you, because what I want is that you guys get really involved and start learning from each other and explore all of the things that I don't know yet about student pages and lessons. So after this little blurb from me, you've got 4 different tasks. You need to create your own student page, view and comment other pages, and use a peer marking rubric, a very simple marking rubric, to evaluate someone else's work, and then share our experiences together in the collaborative Google document. So we'll think about what lessons we've learned over the last half hour, any remaining questions we have about using student pages in the lessons tool, and then any suggestions for improving the tool. So I'm going to flip over to showing you the site that you're going to be using. And 1 second while I switch the screen over. Okay, so now you should be able to see, I've lost my view of what you can see again. So the conference homepage, and we're on the active learning session page, which you would have had to click on this link to come in to join this webinar. For those of you who don't know, I don't know whether you can see how many people are attending this session, and maybe I should keep it a mystery and you'll see by how many people create pages, but we've got a really good group of people out there, so I think there's got to be a lot of activity on the site. It'd be really interesting to see how Sakai copes with all of that simultaneous editing and everything. So what you need to do is go into the hands-on activity. If you click on that button, you'll get into the page where it lists the activities that we're going to do. So pages. You can download a PDF of the instructions here if it's a little bit easier for you to keep an eye on what the tasks are whilst you're actually active lower down on this page. So the first task is to create your own page. And I just want to emphasize here, because of the limited time that we have, keep it simple. It doesn't have to have any fancy subpages, multimedia, or anything like that. It's quite fine for it to be just text. If it's your first time around, keep it basic. If you've got more experience, of course, you're very welcome to make it more flashy and embed pictures, multimedia. Be aware that the only way you can do this is by linking to existing HTML pages, existing URLs, because it's not possible for us to upload things to the resources page of this Sakai site. So there will be 5 minutes to create your own page. Then the second task is to comment on each other pages, and I've given you an ever so generous 8 minutes for that. Then evaluate other pages using the peer marking rubric, and also I'd like you to evaluate your own, especially after you've seen some other pages and you've got an idea of what it is that's possible to do with student pages, maybe from some of the more experienced users. And then 10 minutes to summarize your own learning, and we'll do that on a shared Google Doc. So I will just scroll down to that. Wow, I can see there's loads of pages being created already. That's fantastic. So this will mean about 10 to 12 will come on to the page in just a little while to load. And we'll start sharing and collaboratively editing this document. And what I'd like to do we'll be doing that from about 20 to 12, and then at about 10 to 12 I'd like to have a look at this. We all convene back in the GoToWebinar area, and I will say what I think the main messages are that are coming out of this, and then also invite you guys to ask any questions or to give any comments yourself if you think there's something really amazing that popped up for you, some massive learning experience that you had during this that you want to share with the others and highlight for everyone. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I will switch my screen back to the view of the slides, just in case there are any latecomers, they can see what it is that they're supposed to do. And at various points in the process, I will give you a little nudge to move on to the next task verbally. in case you haven't got there yet. But other than that, I'm going to be active on the site with you. Feel free to interrupt me at any time with questions, and Matt will nudge me. And I say we just get going with the first task. All right, good luck and enjoy.
Lucy, we do have a couple of questions here that you might want to
Oh, of
respond
course.
to. Marilyn does have
Yeah.
a question that she was clicking on some student pages that are listed here, and she was getting notice that there are no items on the page that are currently visible to you.
That could well be because people haven't saved the thing that they're working on at the moment. So I don't have much experience with this of trying to look at pages as other people are actively trying to create them. But what I suggest is that she goes back to those pages in a minute or two to see if people have had a chance to kind of update and save their edits. And if
Okay.
anyone else has a feedback on that or knows more about it, feel free to share with us.
Okay, and also maybe for some people who have come in a little late, if you could point them to the Create Student page again, if you could point them to the place where they need to create their student pages.
Right, okay, yep. So let me just switch screens again. Okay, so you should now be able to see the Sakai page. You need to click on activity, and once you're in there, if you scroll, because I've already created my own page, I think it appears at the top of the list, but it might be down at the bottom under all the other names. There will be a link that says create your own page. I can't remember the exact wording, but it will be down in this student pages section. I hope that answers the question.
I think that's great. Thanks, Lucy.
Cool. All right, get going. I can see a lot of people already have. So in case you haven't already started to comment on other people's pages, there's a huge diversity of pages out there. There's no way you're going to be able to look at them all. I'm amazed by how many people are participating in this, and it's wonderful. Pick a few names at random, people you know, people you don't know, and go and have a look at what they've put on their page and add a few comments. Maybe you can help them answer their questions. Maybe you can make connections with them. Are they using the student pages in the same way as you or differently? Do they have a different kind of experience of using student pages? And if any of you are still at the stage of deciding whose pages to comment on, then you can look through the list and see which pages already have comments and maybe pick one of the people who haven't had anyone giving them feedback on their work yet.
Lucy, we also have a question here in the chat from Rich, who asks if student pages are a new feature found only on Sakai 10, and also how they're created.
I can't answer the question about when student pages appeared, I'm afraid. I'm pretty sure that Oxford is using Sakai 10, and we started using student pages. Well, we started using the lessons tool 1 year ago. I don't know when student pages arrived. Sorry, what was the second half of the question? How are they created? Can you clarify what you mean? Do you mean when you're creating a lessons page, how do you add a student pages section or something different?
Yes, I think Rich was actually asking how they were created in terms of tools. So through what tool these pages are created in a Sakai site.
Yeah, they are through the lessons tool. So maybe I'll bring you back, if anyone wants to look at this, I'll bring you back to my screen because I've got a I've got editing functionality on this lessons page. So I'll show you how you can add them on the assumption that your Sakai installation has the same options. So let me see, you can now see my screen. So you've got the content page for your lesson tool, and if you scroll down that list, you can see here you've got a section that's add student content. You click on that, and the default settings are that each student will have their own page. So they click on the button to create their own page, and they have editing control over that page. But there are lots of different settings you can use to change the way that student pages are used.
And Rich, in answer to your first question, as far as I am aware, yes, this is a new feature that was introduced in Sakai 10. As far as I'm aware, student pages were not available in lessons before Sakai 10.
Thanks, Matt. And I'd like to nudge you all now, if you haven't done it already, to have a go at peer marking somebody else's pages. So choose a couple of pages. It's very quick to apply the rubric. Give them a grade and apply the same thing to your own page. So you've got self-marking of your page. And at the end of the session, I'll show you what the overall peer evaluation statistics look like.
And while people are working on that, we do have some other questions. We have a question from Terry that there's no heading option. There's no option to create a custom heading. And she wonders whether this would affect accessibility for other students, or is that considered too technical?
No, not at all. Well, I mean, based on my own experience, in the functionality here for the student pages and for the lessons pages in general is quite restricted in comparison to what I have when I access the lessons tool in the Oxford University site. So I don't know whether this is something they've set up purely for this virtual conference site, or whether it's something that's common to most of the Sakai sites. But it's worth talking to other people on faculty, and I'll from other universities and within your own university to find out what options you have, because in the Oxford University installation we can definitely use headings and a lot of other different editing tools that don't appear on this virtual conference site.
That's great. We also have a question from Moja, who asks how, in your opinion, student pages can be used differently from something like a blog or a wiki or a forum.
That's a really good question, and that's something that I would like to open up to the whole group. And that it's something that I've added a comment on someone else's page. There's a lot of pages, you may not find it, so it'd be really great if you've got questions like that that aren't being answered directly now, if you write them in the Google Doc that we're working on in a couple of minutes. And then it might be that other people can give you those answers actually during this session, or it might be that they can add them later to the Google Doc. And I'll have a think about, given I'm impressed and surprised at how many people have joined this session, which means it's not as easy to summarize everything that's going on as I thought it might be, which is wonderful. But I'll have a think about how I could summarize the learning and the questions and the answers that have been generated over the next day or two, and try and get those out to people so that we've got something really powerful that comes out of this session.
And we also have some basic questions just about how to locate the peer review. Some folks may have been playing around with the site and they may have already found this, but just in case they haven't, if you want to show them very briefly, Lucy, how they can find and locate that peer review function in the student pages.
Absolutely. So I will go into my own student page. And if you scroll down to the bottom of that, I'm hoping that my view looks the same as yours, as a slightly greater evaluation. What I'm hoping you will see is the rubric, and you can choose your different options. And I've just revealed the scores that other people are giving me for my page. Are you seeing that? I'm assuming you are because other people look like they've been marking my page as well.
We are seeing that, Lucy. We're seeing a little bit of audio latency, some audio issues when you switch to Firefox, when you switch to your browser, but I think because people can see your screen, they can understand exactly what they need to do.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Okay, so looking at the time, I'm going to nudge people on to starting to edit the Google Doc. I'm probably going to open it now, but it pages are now where you've had a few pages. Think, I'm sorry, there's not much time for reflection in this. It's very pushed for time. But have a little think about what remaining questions you have. Has anything arisen for you that's been helpful for your learning? Do you feel do you feel free to tell me if enough time? Because I'm done this longer to the lunch anyone who wants to join.
Lucy, I think we're experiencing some more audio issues while you're showing your browser window and while you're sharing that with us. So I wonder if maybe you might want to switch
Okay.
the view that you're sharing to your PowerPoint and maybe post the URL to the Google Doc in the chat, and let's see if that helps the audio issue.
Okay, let me see how I can do that. So I've switched back to the PowerPoint, so hopefully you can hear me better with the audio. And I'm just seeing how I can get the URL for the Google Doc. Yeah, brilliant, that's right. So it was actually embedded in resources, and I'm just opening up the page now so that I can get the URL. So in the chat window, Matt, I seem to only have the option of sending chat to organizers and panelists only. Will that go to everyone, or is it something that you then repost?
Why don't you send that to me, Lucy, and I will now repost it to everybody.
Great, thank you. You should have it now.
Okay, everyone, so the link to Lucy's Google Doc has now been posted in the chat. So if you guys want to open that up, you can just click on that link in the chat box that's on the GoToWebinar control panel. And Lucy, while people are continuing to add a few more things into the Google Doc, there are just a couple more questions about the peer evaluation rubric. Tony
Yep.
was wondering how you added that to the lessons page. And then Jim was wondering how you created that table. And also, I think there were some questions about the scale, that it was a little unclear whether a 4 was a good rating or a bad rating. There were just a few questions about that.
Yeah, all brilliant questions, and I think some of those are definitely going to have to go in the suggestions to improve the tool. I won't switch over to show you how you can add the peer evaluation because it's going to affect my audio again, but it's part of the settings for the student pages, adding peer evaluation. And under those settings, it enables you to either use the sample rubric or create your own rubric. All you do is you think about what criteria you want to apply, and you write them as a short sentence. And I think you could write quite long sentences, but I think it would be better to have a short phrase, and then ideally in the instructions for the activity you would explain a little bit more how to apply the rubric. And then the table itself and the kind of 0 to 4 marking scheme would, that's set up, it's defined by Sakai already. That's not something you have to create by hand. So I don't know whether there are options for changing the way it looks, but again, explaining the scale for the criteria from 0 to 4, I think would be something you'd have to do in the general text for the activity on the lessons page, because I don't think there's scope to edit that peer rubric in the way that it appears to the students at the bottom of their student page.
That's great, Lucy. So that would seem to answer Terry's question about whether or not you could redefine the rubric criteria, that at least at this point it seems rather fixed.
You
Vicky,
can,
oh,
sorry,
no, go ahead. No,
can
go
I
ahead.
clarify? You can redefine the criteria, but you don't think you can redefine the numbers that are used. I didn't see any way to do that in any case.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. Vicky was also wondering whether you had considered, or others might have considered, the possibility of using it as a kind of faculty evaluation.
Yeah, absolutely, that's possible. I don't know, maybe other people, that's a really good question to add to the Google Doc, and it might be that other people have ideas about how to evaluate the work of faculty. I don't know whether you can apply peer evaluation to a page that isn't a student page, so up to a regular lessons page. I'm assuming that's what you're asking. But maybe that's something to add to the development wishes, to be able to add that capability so that other people can come in and evaluate, or the students can come in and evaluate your lessons pages.
Well, it's about 6 minutes until 12 Eastern Standard Time, so we've got just a couple more minutes. I know that people are still writing a few notes and observations into the Google Doc, but maybe, Lucy, if there are things that you want to hit on, final points that you want to make before we wrap up, that would be great.
Cheers, Matt. So I'm just scanning through at the moment, and there's so much information coming in, it's quite hard to process. I think that definitely it would be useful for me to firstly be able to go through and look at the questions that people posted initially when they created their student pages, and bring those, if people haven't had time to bring those in, I will bring those into the Google Doc, and make a note of whether they've been answered or not during the session. Um, and yeah, I think that for me right now, the things that are coming out are kind of questions about how to use the peer marking system, the rubric, and basically the kind of questions that people have been coming up with verbally. Those things were coming up on individual student pages and are also coming back up in the Google Doc. One thing I would love to have is to have the ability to do this kind of live, simultaneous, collaborative editing within lessons, but perhaps it's something that we shouldn't propose to the developers, because we have a tool, Google Docs or Evernote, that already does that successfully. But I'm I mean, I have hesitations about using Google for everything, and I know not everyone shares those. But I do think it would be wonderful if we could have the ability to collaboratively edit. But I think that that would require a big rewriting of the lessons tool.
And we do have
I'm
just a
really happy
couple
to
of
see.
questions in the
Sorry.
chat. That's okay. We do have just a couple of questions in the chat that I definitely wanted to bring up before we sign off in the next couple of minutes.
Do, yeah, go ahead.
Vicky had a question about whether faculty can evaluate pages, whether pages can be graded, and whether they can be linked to the gradebook.
Yes, absolutely they can. That's not something I've set up for these, but again, if you add student pages, then you can go in to edit the various settings for the student pages, and you can have them you can have it so that they can be graded. You can have so comments can be graded, and so that the pages themselves can be graded, and those are two separate processes. And I think for both of those processes, you can have the marks feed into Gradebook. So it's all very well integrated with Gradebook.
And Jean had a question about whether the student pages were group aware, whether they could be assigned to groups of particular students as opposed to just individuals.
Absolutely. So you can have it so that groups can work together. You have to set up the groups in the way that you normally would within the site tools, and then you can have it so that only individuals in those groups can edit, in the same way as you have individual pages here that you as an author can edit but everyone else can see. You can have groups editing, but I think there's also the possibility to limit who can see the pages by group, but I'd have to check that. I know that you can definitely collaboratively edit as a group.
And we also have maybe a final question here from the folks at the University of Notre Dame who are asking whether student page content can be used as course content in future terms, so that if you duplicate a site or move a site forward, move a lessons tool forward, whether that student content moves forward. I know that at the University of Virginia, that is not the case. Student content does not move forward for privacy reasons, but I don't know if you also have any comments or thoughts on that, Lucy.
Well, my experience is similar to yours at Oxford. It's like all of the content in the discussion forums, it gets stripped out. So you'll have the structure, you'll have that student pages are a part of that lesson, but you won't have the individual content of the student pages. That will all be taken out when you duplicate a site. I think there might be ways to get around that, and I'm not one of the tech people, so I'm not sure how that would work, but there might be ways. Obviously you'd have to get the students' agreement and all of that, but there may be ways to do that, but as far as I'm aware, it doesn't happen automatically. Okay, so if that's the last question we have time for, there's just one more thing I'd like to show you, and that's what the peer evaluation stats look like. And this involves letting people see how your page was evaluated. I hope no one objects to that. You don't have a voice right now, so I'm afraid you're just going to have to put up with it. So I'm going to switch over to my main screen in the awareness that that's going to make the audio go a bit scrappy. So I'm just going to slowly scroll down and not say anything for a minute. So something I've learned just from looking at that is that I don't know what where it has on the right-hand side, peers evaluated, and then a number. I don't know whether that's the number of people who have evaluated their page or the number of people that they have evaluated. So that's a question that I'm going to add to the Google Doc to try and find out the answer to. But I think it's now 12 noon, so we should probably wrap up there. I'd just like to thank everyone for being so actively and enthusiastically involved. It's been really fun.
Thank you so much, Lucy. This was a really special presentation for me because I think that this is something that we all should probably do a little bit more in our work. I spend about 30% of my time working in end user support, which means I work a lot with students, but I don't necessarily spend as much time as I should actually diving into Sakai as a student and seeing exactly what I can see there and what would be helpful to me as a student and what might need to be changed. And so I think this was a great presentation to show all of those things. Again, this session was recorded, so you'll be able to go and take a look at the session again, and I encourage everybody to do that, and you'll receive an email once that recording is available. So thanks again, everybody, so much for your participation. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact Lucy directly outside of the webinar, and I hope that we can continue this kind of work again going forward. Thanks so much, everybody.
That's great. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone.